Good evening, Camilla. It's so lovely to see you. How are you? How are you?
Well, it's got very chilly up here in New York, but it is December and it is nearly the end of 21. And so this evening, I'm really glad I'm able to be with you as we do a look back and look forward to 2022. Jamie, I am so grateful that we've been able to put together and develop the ScotsinUS Podcast series, because it really has given us a way of keeping connected to our partners and friends back in Scotland, amplifying their stories and sharing their news. But also, I hope it's also helped everybody feel a little bit closer to Scotland, and as we've shared our love of it. You know, we've done over 50 podcasts now in our library.
Absolutely, that's an incredible archive full of these ScotsinUS podcasts, and there's been so many brilliant interviews and features, opportunities to learn more about Scotland. I've learned so much over the past year, and it's been a great experience, and, you know, hats off to all the team for the podcast. It's been great.
Well, it's also given us a way to be able to be really effective and helpful around the Honestfeld Library most recently, as we managed to bring together the American patrons of the Oxford Library together with National Trust for Scotland and also Abbotsford, and to discuss it with their experts and everybody and share the news, but also all the other projects we're involved in, which we can talk about in a little bit. But before I forget, what we also need to spotlight at this moment is how you've developed our monthly music program, which now is really a magazine and spotlight on young talent, which I'm so proud of us being able to do because of our Lord Malcolm Douglas Youth Bursaries, because we've been able to really shine a spotlight on a lot of great new talent.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, and I've really enjoyed being a part of it. You know, there's so much great talent out there, so much talented youth out in Scotland and, of course, in the US and Canada, and it's just wonderful to get the opportunity to shine a spotlight on them and help tell their stories. And certainly, I've had a great time. I'm enjoying it profusely.
Waking up at 6 a.m. could be a hustle. Keeping my equipment on the bus too. Just to do the thing I love. Saturday, slightly empty in the cold air. It's brushing past me as I watch the streets fill up. And the streets are painted with hearts of gold. We've marched 1,000 miles, fought hard for our rights. Through history we've played our hand, the great woman of this land. Heroism we have seen, Mary Barber's Rhine Army, Jane Haining, righteous among nations. 'Cause we are doctors, lawyers, mothers, footballers, first minister, poet laureate, we're on the move, and I'm telling you, the glass ceiling's going, we're coming through. Rise up, take the stage, play your game, don't be afraid. You're a work of art, or Jones of art, always be proud of who you are. Girl, you gotta hold your head up high, don't let this moment pass you by. You can be anything you believe you can be. Girl, this world is waiting just for you, so go and shine and live the truth. You can be anything you believe you can be. So let's boldly build new roads, sports stars and role models, 3 silvers made Olympic gold. Catherine's legacy we'll follow. It's up to all of us, stand up for what we love. Feminism is an energy of heart and soul, humility. So husbands, fathers, sons and brothers united, we'll fight for each other. No country is more fitting to inspire the world we live in. We may penicillin, television, steam engines, educated thinking. So what's equality to the pioneers of history? Girl, gotta hold your head up high, don't let this moment pass you by. You can be anything you believe you can be. Girl, this world is waiting just for you, so go and shine and live the truth. You can be anything you believe you can be. Anything you believe you can be.
I thoroughly enjoyed that music there from some of our very talented artists that are part of our Sounds from Scotland album. So much talent, so much talent.
But also, I'm looking forward to seeing some of them over here this side of the pond in the months to come. We've got to try to keep a positive outlook, even though this continues to be a challenging time. Through our podcasts and bi-weekly bulletins, we've been able to amplify and share the news, as we just said, with the Honestfeld Library. They're now going to bring the bards home, which is a fantastic outcome from that. But we have directed giving projects such as the Kids OR, Sorby Tower through Clan Hannay, or the Robert Burns World Federation, who are now opening up and offering memberships to North America which will allow them to be able to increase their work to the Robert Burns clubs here. And then we have Sir Sean Connery's SIET fund, which helps graduate students continue their studies. All great projects that we are so proud to be involved in. And through our bulletins, we also share our member benefits, which during this time, we're so glad to be able to do, from whether it's Walker's shortbread and our wonderful discounts, or the Scottish grocer filling our larder, or the fact that very soon we hope to be able to stay at our preferred partners, the Royal Scots Club in Edinburgh, or the Caledonian Club in Belgravia. All things that we are able to tell people about through our bulletins. But our bulletins also carry news of the Highland Games and other things that are happening in our community, which during this time has been very important. And so I'm very glad that right now we're going to be able to catch up with Michael Reed, who really has led on this part of the messaging that's so important to everybody.
Hello, good evening. How are you, Michael?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us on the ScotsinUS Podcast. It's great to see you. How's your weekend going?
It's going fine so far. It's been a quiet one, but good.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. I was hoping we could chat a little bit about some of your excellent work with the American Scottish Foundation, which you've been involved with for many years, and it would be fantastic to learn about your work with the ASF Library, please, Michael, if you could tell us a wee bit about that.
Absolutely. We have many books that have been given to us by various organizations, partly some of them from the estate or the request from the Douglas Hamilton family, and some from various other members. And we realized we really needed to start. We had done cataloging of the portions of the catalog, but of the library, but not the entire thing. And we had missed big portions of the library. And we also needed to have evaluation on them because they are, some of them are rare books. So we're currently doing a shelf at a time, and looking and seeing what the replacement value would be on Amazon or various other websites. And if they are really, really rare, we need to check with vendors who deal in rare books specifically. So we're working on that. It'll take us a while, but we've gotten through 8 shelves, I think, so far. So
absolutely. And some of these manuscripts, these documents are very important as part of the history of the American Scottish Foundation. How does it feel to be involved in collating and looking after these essential documents and books? What does that feel like?
Well, when you find something that's really, I've been also going through the archives, and some of the documents we found have been like letters from the Prime Minister, from Winston Churchill and his wife, Lady Churchill. I saw a letter just this week to Lady Astor, the first woman member of Parliament, as I recall, and who became very involved with our founding, one of our founders, before she got married to the other founder. So they were both very prominent people in various not-for-profit organizations, and somehow they found each other. Actually, they found each other on the floor of Parliament, because Lady Natalie was giving a speech on behalf of her war relief efforts, and on behalf of the UN, and behalf of other efforts she had done, and that's how they met.
Absolutely, that's fascinating. The history of the American Scottish Foundation is so interesting, and the organisation has done so much good for others. Like, amazing. Hopefully the public will be able to view this incredible collection at some point in the future. Are there plans for that at this moment?
We're hoping to perhaps do a revolving series of exhibits in the library where highlights from our collection can be shown on the walls and people can visit for various periods of time, however long we were able to put the materials up. But we certainly hope to be doing exactly that and showing them to the public. And we've also been working a lot on Highland Games.
Yes, indeed. You have been doing incredible work to spread news about these Highland Games and Scottish festivals all across the US.
I realized there was a need for a more updated and complete resource. And so we started using our newsletter to publish for the coming month or 2 months what was going to actually be happening in terms of game schedule. Was it going to be online? Was it really going to be happening? Was it going to be a reduced number of days? Was it going to be a reduced number of people allowed? What we could find out. And in some cases, because there's some of the games are so small, they don't even have websites. So that has been a challenge. But basically, I had to go to every game's website and determine what really was going to be happening. In some cases, the news can change from day to day. So we made sure that we alerted people, this is what, as of our publication date, which is 2 days before we actually posted online, more or less, what we know the game schedule to be for the coming month. But it can still change because...
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you, Michael. I hope that we get the chance to catch up soon. We've had so many wonderful episodes of the ScotsinUS podcast, but I was hoping we would be able to take a few moments to highlight some of your favourites. What comes to mind for your favourites?
Well, I have to say the first thing I think about is how enlightened I feel around the Edinburgh Festival and Fringe Festival after the series of various podcasts we did during the summer. We did several podcasts, and I had never really understood that there were 11 different separate festivals going on that made up the festival. And we had some wonderful conversations with the executive director of the International Edinburgh Festival, who explained in detail what they were focused on, with the Fringe Festival, with the Pleasance Theatre Trust, who explained to us how they had gone from having 30 venues, 300 shows to 6 venues, the challenges they were going through. And now we catch up with one of the leading figures of the Fringe for the past 30 years, Anthony Alderson. He is president of the Pleasance Theatre Trust and also past vice chairman of the Fringe. He spoke with us a few weeks ago as they prepared for the Fringe, and now we find out how everything is going. Anthony, good morning, or rather I should say good afternoon as it is with you. It's wonderful you've made the time to join us today, given that the festival is already underway. Would you like to start off just by telling us how the first few days of the festival have gone?
They've been wonderful, but weird. I mean, weirdly small but beautifully formed. I mean, we would normally be opening 33 venues and we'd do a massive great press launch on the Saturday. But this year, we're only opening 5 venues. And in fact, on our first day, we only presented 3 shows instead of 270 shows. So as you can imagine, it does feel a little strange. However, walking in through the gates of the Pleasance, it looks and feels the same. The audience look and feel the same. The shows look and feel the same. and it's got the same rather wonderful atmosphere.
But isn't it rather like when we did our this very small show at Brown Park, it felt like coming out of a cocoon.
Oh, it's I cannot tell you how wonderful it is to see the first person come walking through the gate. And I mean, the festival, it does it every year. You get the thing ready, and at 10 o'clock on day one, this trickle of people starts coming through the gate, and they come for 27 days. And on the last day, they trickle out again, and that's it. Well, this is no different. And the spirit, the important thing for me is that we've raised the flag, and the spirit is there. The Pleasance is here in Edinburgh, and people won't forget about us.
No, and I think that via this power of Zoom and the way we're now connecting, we're able to hear from you around the world. We're able to carry our news items to our community in a way we never were before. And I hope that this is going to help mean we get even greater amounts of people arriving in Edinburgh next year. But I don't think we're going to go away and stop using this new way of letting people know what's going on and being a part of it if they can't be there.
And I think that's, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that human beings, we seem to adopt new behaviors so quickly, and it's rather exciting that we can do that. To know, to be able to have this call, over the distances we are, is really exciting. And you're absolutely right. This now means that meetings can happen more quickly. We can have a board which is truly international, that doesn't have to travel halfway around the world to sit in a meeting. We can transport work from one side of the world to the other in a way that we couldn't before. It will never replace live work. No. It will never replace live work, and nor should it. But maybe there's a brand new genre in there waiting to be found.
But for instance, I was just talking to the Edinburgh International, and they were talking about their new outdoor spaces they put together. And I think this is rather like the outdoor dining and everything. I think this is a wonderful new aspect. And so I think that this will just grow it in different ways. But before we, because I know you're so busy today, we have you for a short time, can you tell us a little bit about the shows that are available online or that are streamed or will be available a few days afterwards?
Absolutely. Well, we have so our full program is about 40 shows. 12 of them are online. They have been created with a number of partners, including Falmouth University in Cornwall. We've had 7 shows be down there, being recorded in a studio. They were put out as live. One of them, a number of them with partners from other theatres around the country. There's a lovely show called Shamanic, which I've sent you a clip of. And they are a Scottish company. They're supported by Made in Scotland, which is a fund through the Fringe Society that comes from Creative Scotland. And they're a band, but there is this wonderful painter called Maria Rudd, who in a live setting paints on a piece of glass that is then projected onto and mapped all over the sides of the buildings. And we did that back in June, and it's an hour-and-a-half long concert. But you get to see the Pleasance Courtyard in a way that you will have never seen it before. And this rather extraordinary concert that also features Rula Lenska, the actress Rula Lenska, who is featured as part of it. It's wonderfully, it's just totally out there. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece of art. And do you know what? This is the only year we could do it in, because the rest of the year we would be, otherwise we'd be building the venue at that time. We'd never have the time to record it. We'd never get the courtyard empty to itself. So I thought, well, why not? Let's try and create something in a space in the 1 year when we could, it's the only year in which we could do it.
And you become a hybrid because, of course, the art festival is going on at this time. So
yeah.
merging several disciplines.
Music, this is art, this is, and it's online. You know, so it's really glorious. So I hope your audiences get a chance to see it, because it's truly great.
You're premiering that on the 16th of August.
It goes up online on the 16th of August via the Fringe Society. It's called the Fringe Player, which is on the Fringe Society, which is in fact where all of the Pleasance online program will be. And yeah, you can see it from the 16th. The online program, the rest of the online program started at the beginning of the festival. And I don't have the program in front of me, otherwise I'd tell you more about it. But I honestly, there is so much going around in my head at the moment. I can't actually tell you anything else that's in it without reading it. And I've suddenly found I don't have the program next to me.
But I'm so delighted that we've been able to connect with you in this way. As you said to us last time, this is a year-round effort, putting together, and all the collaborations that go on with our own 59th Street Theatre here in New York that comes across each year normally, to all the different rep companies to Cornwall and everything else. So we look forward to catching up with you again shortly. But now we're going to hear from Shamanic and our wonderful artist, Maria Rudd.
Maria Rudd. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And then, Jamie, I have to say that I found it wonderful to talk to the Lindores Abbey of their history history of whiskey, of where it came from, the early abbots, and how now after 400 years they were producing their very first casks of whiskey. So maybe we could catch up with Lindores and let everybody hear about that, because I believe that whiskey is about to be available to all of us.
Oh, wow. Here we go.
Good morning, Drew. It's a wonderful day, you tell me, in Scotland.
It is. The sun is always shining in Scotland. I'll have you know. The picture behind me is false. It's obviously a picture of the distillery, but the sun is out. As you can see, it's coming through the window on my shiny head.
So, Drew, I'm so glad that we have this chance to talk to you. We've been at the American Scottish Foundation, we've been watching the progress of the Abbey for the last few years. You've very kindly been in contact with us and worked with us with the Aquavita. And now there is so much that is beginning to happen with the first edition of the whiskey that's coming out. But let's go back a bit. Mm-hmm. You have an incredible history at Lindores. It's called the Spiritual Home of Whiskey. Could you tell us a little bit about the early days, how this all came together, and where we are now?
Yes, well, it's a lucky story, I suppose, is the honest way of saying it. So my great grandfather John Howison bought Lindores Abbey Farm in 1913. And it's not a big, he farmed a far bigger area, but Lindores was added to that area. And it was 98 acres, so for a farm, that's not really very big. And in the middle of it are the remains of Lindores Abbey, which is a nice thing to have, but that was really all it was. And he kept some cattle in it. I've got to confess, when I was a kid, we used to ride horses, even motorbikes around in it. So it was a lovely back garden, but that we didn't really think any more of it, if I'm honest. And then about now 20 years ago, I wasn't living here at the time. My father was here, and he phoned up one day and he said, gosh, I had a chap came to the door, slightly disheveled, but a very charming chap. And he asked if he could walk around the Abbey ruins. And father thought, well, that's fine. Knock yourself out. I thought it was slightly strange. No one had really asked to do that before, but he said, no, that's fine. And then about 6 months later, this lovely hardback book arrived in the post, and it's called Scotland and Its Whiskies. And the chap turned out to be Michael Jackson, who, sadly, he's passed away, but he was a leading whiskey and beer writer of his day. And it said, "Dear Ken, thank you very much. Turn to page 70. And on page 70, there's a lovely photograph of the Abbey ruins. And it says, "For the whiskey lover, it is a pilgrimage." And then it went on to say that he wandered around at the Abbey ruins saying a silent prayer of thanks to Friar John Core, who, I've got to admit at that point, none of the family, I think the whiskey world all knew this, but we weren't a whiskey family. And really what that was doing was cementing Lindores Abbey as this spiritual home. And the reason for that is when I say Friar John Core, in the whiskey world, he's sort of legendary in that in 1494, there's an entry in the Exchequer Roll, which is like it's the King's tax record of that particular year. And I've had the privilege of seeing it. It's in Edinburgh, and you get special permission. It's a 30-yard long scroll in Latin. And some very clever person, and I don't know if anyone knows who this clever person was, but I owe them a great debt of gratitude, because buried in amongst all these transactions is, to Friar John Core, 8 bowls of malt wherewith to make aqua vitae for the king. And that is the earliest written reference to the production of whiskey in Scotland. And the industry celebrated their 500th anniversary in 1994, kind of cementing it as the earliest written reference. So when I found that out, I thought, well, it's too big a deal not to try and do something about it. And it's funny looking back on it now. So this was in, as you can imagine, even the slightly early days of emails and the internet. And I thought, well, I'll send a message out I'll look if there's any whiskey societies and say, gosh, I've just found this great news, and I would maybe like to try and build a shed, literally just a shed that people could come and look at the Abbey. And I sent it, and alphabetically, the top list of the list was a whiskey society in Canada called Anquaich. And I sent it and didn't really think much more of it, if I'm honest. And then the next morning, I opened up my emails, and there was this great long email from this whiskey society. The most excited thing they'd ever heard. It was the biggest news in whiskey, and they'd set the hills alight and all sorts of stuff. And that's really what kick-started me. But I did realize that, of course, because of the time difference, when they typed this email, they'd maybe had a few drams themselves, because it was so effusive. But to me, that's what gave me the kind of idea to take the story onwards. And I did. And Helen, my wife, and I really sort of tried to make something happen at Lindores. But 20 years ago, the whiskey world was slightly in the doldrums. So raising the money, we had great vocal support, but obviously any project, even building a shed, takes quite a bit of funding. So after a few years, I kind of wound it down, and then thought, well, it was a nice story. We still have the Abbey. It's still a nice thing to happen, but it's not really what I hoped it would be. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, a phone call out of the blue from a friend in the industry said, well, come on, Drew, there's distilleries opening up all over the place. And the one place there should be, in his opinion, was Lindores Abbey. And so we kind of thought, well, carpe diem, seize the day, make it happen. And really, that is kind of what happened. The whiskey industry is in a better place. It didn't happen overnight, but here we are now sitting right next to the distillery with our aqua vitae on sale around the world. And very importantly, is our whiskey coming on the market in about a month and a half's time. So that's the end of that chapter, if you like, of the story, but the beginning of the next.
But it's very, the big crux to this is that it takes 7 years to wait for a whiskey production to occur, which is, tough. And for any distillery trying to come on board. And you fortunately, you know, you weren't building completely, you know, you had this marketing tool almost already there, and you had this beautiful Abbey,
Yes.
ruin and everything else, but you could then develop this whole project around it. So,
Yes.
but it is a 7-year wait. Which
It's technically 3 years and a day.
All right.
It's 3 years because the Scotch Whisky Association has quite strict rules, if you like, for very good reasons. So when we make the spirit, so the spirit comes off the still, it has to sit in a wooden cask in a warehouse in Scotland for 3 years, and actually 3 years and 1 day to allow for leap years, which is so hence because people always wonder why is there this 1 day, but you're exactly right, and that's the challenge for any distillery, is that's a very expensive business, because for 3 years and a day you are producing something that you can't sell. So when I was initially going to an investor and say, well, can you lend me all this money? But by the way, I should tell you, we can't sell anything for a long time, which is why a lot of them, in fact, almost every new distiller I can think of brought out a gin, because gin you can distill to make today, sell tomorrow. And I'm not against, I like gin, I like a good gin and tonic, but and there's still a huge boom. And if I talk to my bank manager, I'm sure he thinks we should have done a gin, and he's probably right. But I had to stick to my guns, because my thought from the very beginning was if our USP is Friar John Call, the spiritual home of Scotch whisky, if the first liquid, if you like, that came from Lindores was a gin, people might think, well, hang on, the monks didn't make gin. So
your story all along has been very much your core historical story of heritage.
Exactly.
And I think that's brought you out from all the explosion of small distilleries, and keeps you really, as Lindores is really, it stands out and has, people know it now as a spiritual home.
Yes. Yeah, and we were very keen to stick to our guns on that. As I say, financially, it would have been easier to take a different route, but it's not all about money. We felt, you know, we're a business, and when we have our whiskey out, then fair enough, we're in with the big boys. But no, I was adamant from day one that our core prospect, when you read it, is Friar John Call created aqua vitae, which is the water of life, which became usquebaugh, which became whiskey. So it was the very origins of whiskey. But aqua vitae is the same spirit as barley, is distilled barley spirit. But what the monks did, so our monks came from France, and they brought these skills with them, is they had this distilled spirit, which they then infused with plants that grew around the monastery. And I think, to be perfectly honest, it was initially very much for medicinal reasons. You know, it was for curing aches and pains. My pet theory, especially in this part of Scotland, is that you get 5 people in a room, be they monks or not, and there's something that smells quite powerful. One of them tried drinking it, and then his more enlightened friends probably said, well, okay, if we're going to drink it, let's try and make it taste nice. So in a way, that's exactly what we did. You know, several hundred years later, we said, well, okay, what is aqua vitae, which is what I just described. And we thought, well, let's try and stick as much as we can to the original theory, what the monks did. So we set about taking various plants from the Abbey. And my previous life, I was a chef, so I could help with some of this. But the reality was quite soon upon us. I mean, the plant that grows mostly around the Abbey is wild garlic. So if you want to make soup or pesto, there's lots of lovely things you make with wild garlic, but not a spirit drink, that's for sure. So there was quite a lot of trial and error. And eventually, and meanwhile, it wasn't just us kind of on our own in an amateur way, we enlisted the help of Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh has a department of brewing and distilling, and I think it's arguably the leading university in the world for that particular thing, and it should be for distilling, given we're in Scotland. So we got some of the PhD students to help us in our project. And to cut a long story short, we abandoned some plants and herbs, etc. And we have a plant that still grows in the Abbey right now called Sweet Sicily, which is slightly aniseedy. So that's one of the plants. So we forage at this time of year is when these things grow. And also a kind of weed called clavers that most Scottish people would remember as sticky willy, just grows everywhere. So that was another product we could use. So we came at it in a sort of scientific way. It was a lovely story, very scientific. The problem was, if I'm being really honest, it still didn't taste that great. And whatever the history behind it is, it's got to taste nice. So then we started working with some of the kind of the cool bartenders, mixologists, actually, as they're called now, in Edinburgh, a super restaurant called Timber Yard. Joe Radford, that is the son of the owner. He's very, very clever with these flavors. And really where it was falling short, we needed to make it a little bit sweeter. We weren't making a sweet liqueur, but we needed to take away the harshness. So what we started doing is working with dates and raisins. And the reason we could do that is the monks trade, because we wanted again to keep the story as tight as we could. And we know that the monks of Lindores traded with Flanders in Europe, because we've got great little, there's 4 history books about Lindores Abbey, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only person that's read all 4 of them, if I'm honest. And lots of them are in Latin, and I wasn't very good at Latin at school, but I've managed to cobble something together. So there's all these trade entries. So for instance, there's a lovely little entry. It says, to Flanders, 8 barrels of salmon, 2 thrown overboard because they were rotten. So even then there was trade going on. I mean, it's a different discussion, because I have used it a few times, that our French monks were living in Scotland and trading with Europe. And of course now we've just come out of Europe, but that's a different conversation. But the fact,
wasn't that great to hear from them? I really, the story is really illuminating. And I suppose when you look at 50 different podcasts and all the people that have joined us, with a great thank you to Joni Smith, who did a great interview with Gus Noble, to the Abbotsford Trust telling us about Sir Walter Scott's 250th anniversary. It's so difficult to sort of pick any bits out. But I think as we hope people will go and look at the library we now have on Spotify and their favorite different platforms under the ScotsinUS. And I think coming up in the next few weeks, we're going to have the Scottish North American Community Conference go up as well. And maybe right now we could have a couple of snippets from that. We found the discussion we had with around eco-fashion with Siobhan McKenzie, Chris Hunt, and Clare Campbell of Prickly Thistle really fantastic. I felt that was an excellent moment. So should we do that?
That sounds fantastic.
And now we turn to the world of fashion, of Scottish fashion and design, and to sustainable fashion. So what is sustainable fashion? It uses textiles that are manufactured, constructed, and marketed in a responsible and conscious way that acknowledges and counts for their environmental and socioeconomic impacts, that is ideally done across a garment's full life cycle, from creation to disposal. Responsible designers understand that everything they make has influence, from the materials they use to the way they treat the people producing their goods, and all of our panelists are at the forefront of eco-fashion today. So let me begin by introducing the panel. Siobhan McKenzie, designer, Chris Hunt, marketeer and influencer, and Clare Campbell, weaver and self-professed disruptor. Siobhan, can we start by introducing you and you taking it first? You graduated in 2014 with a first-class BA honours degree in fashion design and production, and founded your label 5 days after graduating at the age of 21. In 2016, you were awarded the Best New Fashion Designer. The brand has been featured worldwide in Forbes, Elle, US, Women's Wear Daily, Harper's Bazaar US, and you starred in a Visit Britain worldwide campaign. Clients include megastars Justin Bieber and the Commonwealth Games in 2018, where your designs were worn by Scotland in Scotland's opening ceremony. Siobhan is an authentic, self-named Scottish fashion brand. The brand takes its inspiration from its roots in the Scottish Highlands, infusing innovative design with traditional craftsmanship. You're a great advocate for fashion designers and are proud to work in contrast to the fast fashion industry. Your upbringing influenced your choices within the business. Your father, an environmental officer for the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, instilled sustainability in you as a child. Renowned for your contemporary take on kilts, you championed the Scottish textiles and a made in Scotland approach, where high quality, craftsmanship and sustainability are key. And so can I now hand over to you to tell us a little bit more about your business and how everything is going?
Yes, thank you very much for that, Camilla. Hi, I'm Siobhan McKenzie. As Camilla has just explained a little bit about me, I think you've done that for me, so I might just jump into my sort of presentation. I've just put together some imagery to give a bit more of a visual idea of what I do. So let me just share. Okay. Yeah, so we'll start with the brand, which is self-named Siobhan McKenzie. I'm from the Black Isle in the Highlands of Scotland. And as Camilla mentioned, I started my company 5 days after graduating at the age of 21. I'm super passionate about where I'm from and really proud of my heritage. And so when I got the chance as a student to choose my own design brief, it was really exciting to go into my own roots and do something contemporary with it, as a graduate collection is supposed to be innovative, something different. So I trained in traditional kilt making as a student, and to be honest, it was just really a bit of an experiment to see if I could do something different that hadn't been done before. And I guess I didn't really grasp the magnitude of what I was doing, and that it in fact started a business. So just to give a little bit of an idea of the kind of work I do, these were some pieces I made as a student. So on the right, my contrast plate is probably one of my most popular features, where we can contrast any two materials, for example, tartan tweed, and then the tweed's really popular style, and it's just giving a bit more of like an aesthetic difference to tradition, but whilst encapsulating traditional craftsmanship and skills, which is why I trained first to really sort of understand that craft, because even though doing a fashion degree, it's still a totally different ballgame to kilt making. Kilt making is such a unique craft and such an extensive craft as well. So yeah, these were just some student pieces that I did. So I do menswear and women's wear, and to be sustainable, we operate mainly on a made-to-order system, where It's all bespoke designed, and then that means we're only ordering what materials we need, rather than sort of mass producing garments that are going to result in dead stock or any waste. And of course, manufacturing in Scotland is really, really important to me, to retain these craftsmanship and these skills. So I'll just go on a little bit more. So this is just a bit more of an example of, these are one of my student pieces, and actually is one of my best sellers still today, with the tweed and the tartan contrasting. This is a really popular style. I think it's quite a subtle one, and it's it's really like an impacting sort of piece. So just carry on. Yeah, just another example. So you can go bold, simple. It's really like tailored to each client's individual taste, which is really fun because you rarely come out with the same piece twice. So it just gives an opportunity to add something a bit more current and up to date to our lovely tradition of kilts. And again, these are just some of my women's wear pieces. So I used to kind of take ready to wear styles, and show them in Paris Fashion Week and things like that. And then I reverted back to, again, on the women's wear, more of a made to order system. Just again, it's more sustainable, and you're not sitting on a lot of stock. And for what I'm doing now is the stock that I am carrying is made out of remnants. So I've just launched a new collection where it's all leftover materials that I have. So they are what's carried in my ready to wear now, and then everything else is still custom made and custom designed. And that really, again, comes from my background, from my dad being an environment officer. I've just really been brought up not to waste things, and it's very much how I am. So when it's come to starting a business, it's been such a natural choice for me to go down this route and be sustainable and to celebrate Scottish craftsmanship, because it's really just in my upbringing. It's just something that's quite subconscious to me to do. So it's really nice to incorporate my dad's influence, I guess, into what I do now. And then this is a collaboration I did with a fellow Scottish designer. So Mary Helena does these most beautiful designs in Scotland, and I love to work with different Scottish brands and Scottish companies, because I think that anyone that's kind of sharing the same message as me and promoting Scottish design, and I think it's really great to work together and to complement each other's brands if you can. So this was a really fun collaboration, and we just actually showed this in Chris's show at the V&A, which I'm sure he'll talk about. So it's a really, really fun platform that Chris creates for designers in Scotland to showcase. And yeah, this is the new collection that I was just talking about. So this is all made out of remnant materials. So I mean, some of these I've been holding for years and they just sit there and do nothing. So this is now my ready to wear, utilizing leftover materials and showcasing them. And these silks actually aren't in production anymore. So they should be out there and be worn, because I think I'm very biased. Personally, I think they're so beautiful in silk. So yeah, trying to be sustainable and reusing what we've got, and I guess also like promoting slow fashion is so important to me as well. Buying something that can last forever, rather than buying 20 things that you're going to throw away in a year. I don't need to say that fashion's the second biggest polluter in the world. I'm sure many people know that, and it's really, there needs to be a change where people switch to slow fashion, understand the consequences of fast fashion as well. So hopefully, you know, things myself doing this and other young designers getting on board and promoting this message and sharing that is really going to start to make a difference, because you know, with the importance of COP26 being in Glasgow, I think people really need to wake up and actually have accountability for what they consume. And I'm really lucky the way that I've been brought up, that I've always kind of had that mindset, but I know that not everyone has. So I think it's really, really an important time to look at your consumption, especially when it comes to fashion. So yeah, we have these beautiful textiles on our doorstep in Scotland, and I think you need to utilise what's around you and what's local, and it's obviously reducing your carbon footprint as well. You're not making overseas, you're not importing fabrics in, and Claire's doing some amazing work creating all of her own fabrics in the Highlands, my fellow Black Isler. So yeah, it's really good. I think this resurgence of everything happening in Scotland, because we definitely have the ability to do something amazing. When you look at Burberry, Chanel, Hermes, they all create products coming from Scotland. So if our textiles are good enough for the biggest brands in the world, then we can absolutely create the biggest brands in the world. So I think that's me.
Okay. And so let's return to the main screen, Chris. And we're now going to, I'm going to have many questions for you in a few minutes, but now let's turn to Chris Hunt, founder of Genuine Scotland. Wonderful to see you this morning. Too long since we've been together and chatting. And you have always been at the forefront as an influencer. You're a stylist, a PR, event director, involved in so many things. I've enjoyed working with you so much over the years. You founded Genuine Scotland, as well as a fashion and textile not-for-profit, Scotland Redesign. And you were formerly London-based, 25 years experience rooted in luxury brands and retail PR, as well as journalism, contributing to media from Scotland on Sunday, BBC Scotland, STV to Vogue, and much, much more in between. And moving to Glasgow in the early 2000s, Chris set up a niche communication agency, Genuine, working within food and drink, music, fashion, and events and travel. During this time, Chris also formed Scotland's first design collective concept, and among many events and other outcomes, introduced designers Christopher Kane to Johnson's Velgen. You're now living in East Coast of Fife and working on a consultancy basis, very busy. And most recently, during COP26, you presented Scotland's Fashion Festival, in which there was an emphasis on sustainability in fashion. So now, Chris, welcome, and so glad you're with us today. And over to you.
Thank you, Camilla. That was a very lovely intro, and it's very lovely to see you and everyone else as well. Thank you very much for having me today. It's an honor to be part of it, and lovely to connect again. As Camilla said, my sort of background, I think my first foray into Scottish textiles came even at school, learning about tartans through brands and designers like Vivienne Westwood. But my first real job was working for the Scotch House, which I don't know if anyone watching remembers, but used to be luxury department stores just exclusively of Scottish textiles and fashion, and fell in love with it and learned a lot about all the factories and all the different mills then. And then working in PR with various sort of 90s and noughties London agencies and the Countess of Wessex and things. And then really a lot of my time since in recent years has been about supporting Scottish fashion and textiles. So that comes in different ways. So I sit on various panels with government looking at equality and accessibility, and also creative industries leadership. Obviously, a big focus at the moment is resilience due to all the various topics going around, including sustainability. But I think one of the things that really excites me about fashion in Scotland is this, we all have different definitions of what fashion means. There's the art and the self-expression, but also fashion can provide dignity and style, but it also provides clothing for everybody. And that's even people who say they're not particularly interested in fashion, still buying and wearing clothing. So absolutely everybody is a stakeholder in our industry. I think the sustainability issue for me comprises sort of three main facets. One is, our existing amazing brands, factories. 2 is how we scale up up and coming brands, you know, which Siobhan touched on in terms of everybody buys from here, but we also have the capacity, therefore, to just have our own new brands. And then 3, how do we engage consumers and next generation students into the sustainability journey? Our industry in Scotland is worth over £2.8 billion a year to the Scottish economy. It employs in the region just under 30,000, I think. These figures were released in October 2020. And then you have all the freelancers on top of that. So your makeup artists, your models, your show producers, all of the supply chain people on top. You know, when we take that sort of everybody buys fashion for warmth, practicality, style, whatever your motive, it's a really diverse industry. And it's also research that we did with Business Gateway and Scottish Enterprise shows that it's an industry which employs mostly women and people from diverse backgrounds. So that is an incredible power dynamic for a very large group of society. It is, as we've also touched on, an industry which globally has seen quite a lot of toxic behaviours. So whether that's the volume of water required to produce a single pair of jeans or a t-shirt, offshore-owned businesses abandoning public realm spaces, leaving our local authorities and high streets a bit strapped and empty. You know, and I think having been sort of around in the field for quite some while, one of the things that's been really empowering about the eco journey is that designers used to come to me, and brands used to come to me, factories, and say, you know, we want to be at such and such a fashion week, or we want to do global expansion and have shops in every country. And people just aren't asking those questions anymore. They're very much looking at how do we develop a business that has a community message, that has strong provenance, that works. Where do I find sustainable fabrics? Sustainable sequin journey is another one. You know, and that also then starts to shape the policy in terms of where we go. So we also know from research, evidence, Mintel reports that the majority, say we have a population of 5 million in Scotland, and then we have the global market as well. The majority of people on their household fashion purchases have quite small budgets. So we have these different areas. We have, you know, designer and specialist or special occasion. We have everyday, affordable, and then we also have fabrics and fibers. So with that in mind, you know, some of our amazing companies like Halley Stevenson's or Scottish Leather Group for several years now have been investing in new machinery, biomass plants on quite large scales to reduce environmental impacts. For anyone that doesn't know, Halley Stevenson's, for example, is a waxed company. They make the waterproof fabrics that Scotland's known for. But obviously in the past, established in 1864, a lot of their waterproofs had petroleum or wax-based products. So in 2021, they've launched a new fabric at British Textile Week called Everwax, which is made entirely of plant-based materials. And they went on to win Fashion Supplier of the Year at Draper's Magazine Awards. And I remember they were one of the very first factories that, in effect, kind of opened the gates and said, fashion designers, come to us, come and work with us. And as obviously that's become a major part of their future-proofing strategy. So I think as designers that, you know, say 10, 15 years ago we were highlighting, are actually now changing their business model from this kind of big, you know, global high overhead model really to be more sustainable, slow fashion. You know, we've got a real opportunity for change, and a lot of the interest, I think, is the fact that we have this huge industry here in Scotland, and a lot of people working in it are already working within a slow fashion model or have the ability to pivot fairly quickly with the right bit of interventions here and there. One of the challenges we have, of course, is that in the past, politicians, investors, we all know, have been a bit nervous of fashion. You know, visions of extravagant catwalks and on, you know, developing masses of stock on the off chance that a certain shop buyer might happen to see it and then take it. And the shops, of course, have changed. The buyers want safe bets. Shops themselves have disappeared, you know. But because of these facts about employment, who it is that's working in this industry, the business models that we have in our Scottish industry and the success stories that we have, we now are working quite more successfully, I would say, and to make the case for business leaders and politicians to feel confident to stand up and say, hang on, this is a really big industry that employs a great many very valuable people, has a lot of skills, has thousands of graduates at H&D and degree level every year. And we really need to look at it because also there's the environmental impact. You can't argue the environmental impact without taking it seriously as an industry first. So that opportunity for change is something that gives us hope that finally fashion in Scotland and also elsewhere around the world can be up there as an industry alongside what I call the other big F's: food, farming, fuel, fishing. These other sort of industries, which are quite often smaller than fashion economically, have their own media. They have full pages in news, and you know, and fashion doesn't quite often get that level of investment or attention. So that is something that is, I think, on the cusp of changing, not just for this sort of investment in factories, but also in this kind of looking at the, you know, clothing for all and the high streets, and then also our designer market, where there's quite a lot of slow fashion, successful slow fashion business models. It's not about doing anything different. It's about doing things as well as everything and bringing that kind of into line, and recognizing our Scottish USPs. A lot of the traditional showcases in other countries rely on massive expenditure. But in Scotland, we have showcases and we do them together. So everybody can afford to participate in them because they're based on a collective model. And working with partners like the V&A Dundee, as we did recently, was fantastic. And basically my job in that is to book and plan, and then I underwrite it. And then I put the opportunity out there and hope that people, you know, buy into it, and whether that's consumers buying tickets or whether it's designers getting on board. So that's my sort of role within that community. But I think, you know, we have this incredible asset for Scotland and incredible asset, you know, from tartan and textiles through to the, you know, cutting edge fabric innovation. And there's so many examples of good practice within our business. And I think our wonderful country and the people, like the constituents of Scottish fashion, everybody has community at their heart, whether that's a Dundee fashion brand that's deliberately providing employment to women who otherwise wouldn't be able to get jobs, whether that's commitments to, you know, paying students or paying living wage to anyone in their supply chain. That ability, the ability and the interest in being really thorough in it all, and using kind of, you know, like the waste fabrics and things like that. I mean, the British Fashion Award winner last year, Alualia, she also creates collections from, you know, waste or biodegradable, you know, sustainable fabrics. And this is the way forward, so that there's the impacts are much smaller. And I think that's why Scottish fashion is a model for the future. If we can stand proud and make the changes and tweaks that we need now, then, you know, we can really do this. And I think it'll absolutely not just continue the economic value of the industry, but it'll develop it and add so much new things in the public realm spaces that currently stand empty, for example. Thank you.
I think what you're saying is we need to do it smart.
Yes. Yeah.
Really
I think
that's really it. And I think that your big point about the stores and you know, understanding now that things will have a longer lead time. They will be made as a bespoke type of situation, as a couture range. They're getting used to that. I don't think they had that in them 10 years ago. I think over the last few years, through the economic things and everything else, and as you're saying, the environmental, that's been a huge shift. So let's now go to Clare, and then I'm really looking forward to us all chatting. Clare, welcome. You are the founder of Prickly Thistle, sustainable tartan weaving mill located in the Scottish Highlands, where local artisans create tartan with intention from 100% natural materials woven on century-old looms, then crafted into zero-waste pieces that last a lifetime. After restoring the textile to its ancestral home, Prickly Thistle champions authenticity and a true definition of made in Scotland through a local supply chain to build Scotland's domestic craft industry with sustainability and integrity at the core. Clare sits on the board of the Scottish Tartan Authority, and I know for a fact the passion you've had in bringing the Prickly Thistle to reality and the mill. And I have to add my congratulations to you, because it's been a wonderful feat and very quickly done. And so over to you.
I'll unmute myself. No, thank you so much, Camilla, and thank you. Lovely to meet you, Chris. First time. Lovely to see you again, Siobhan. To think we're only a few miles away. My goodness, we haven't seen each other. But no, thank you all so much for being part of, you know, a really important aspect of Scotland's gift, you know, past, present, and future, and yeah, to talk about the future of fabrics and fashion. So
I think, Jamie, the main thing that came out of the conference for me was the awareness we all have to strike a balance between technology and the experience. I think that this pandemic has made us all take a breath and to appreciate things more, perhaps. I think so. And with that, this whole campaign of Tread Lightly from the Scottish government, from Visit Scotland, towards tourism, to awareness of our planet and to our eco, and what has happened with COP26. I think all this is very reflective. And we heard again and again during the conference, striking that balance. And so shall we take a moment to share the Tread Lightly video?
It's wonderful. I think you're all going to enjoy this very much.
Being here makes all the steps taken worth it, and the next steps even more important. I choose my path without impacting on our earth. The beat of a drum, the pulse of a club, the warmth of a fire, the taste of the sea. In a place you feel like you've escaped to, that still feels like home. A home protected for future generations, ready to explore. Scotland doesn't do things by small measures, unless it's whisky. So we've charged our glasses, and our cars, and our bikes. If you're hungry for new experiences, thirsty for the unknown, and you want to go further, faster, slower, higher, deeper, louder, but still tread lightly upon our earth, then step forward. Scotland is calling.
I really think Visit Scotland have hit it right with Tread Lightly. I think it reflects how all of us are feeling at this moment. And the slow fashion and this awareness of balancing the technology with the experience, I think is reflected perfectly in so much of what we heard from Snack this year. It's been a challenging year. It's been so difficult for everybody I know. And I'm so grateful to everyone, to our members, to our patrons, to our friends, for all of their support, for all of their kind words, for helping us, for renewing their memberships, for being there for us and egging us on. And we're looking forward so much to all being together and gathering again. And Jamie, I hope you're going to be with us in New York for the New York Tartan Day Parade in April.
I'm absolutely looking forward to it.
I mean, we've got to stay positive. It's a tough time right now, but I think we've got a renewed determination at this moment.
Absolutely. It's important to reflect on the year and the times that we've had, but we've got to be positive looking forward, and there's so much to be grateful for, so much to be grateful.
And I'm very proud of everything we're up to. So thank you, Jamie. Thank you to all the team at the American Scottish Foundation. Thank you to all our listeners. And we wish you the very best of holidays and a wonderful 2022.